Welcome, friends, people for peace, pods of consciousness, planetary citizens, wherever you happen to be today, listening to Glocal News in Social Artistry. I'm your host, Dick Dalton, and each week we get to talk to someone who's building a more humane world from the inside out. And my guest this week is a friend that I've known for 20 years now, Elizabeth Austin out in Ashland, Oregon. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi, Dick. How are you?
Great. Folks, we're Zooming, so if it sounds like we're seeing each other, we are. But you're listening to the audio of our recording that was recently made. So thank you for being with us today. Folks listening to kopn.org here on Columbia's community radio station, 89.5 FM. We are very happy that we're about 50 years old here at KOPN, celebrating next year. And all that we do is to bring you the best of diverse talk and music of the world. And I think today's conversation will exemplify diverse talk. One of the ways that Elizabeth introduces herself is as the founder and director of the Dromenon Project. I'm going to spell that Dromenon. Dromenon.
Dromenon.
Hey, I did it right. I wasn't even looking. The Dromenon Project. And a lot of what we talk about today will explore what it is and why it is and how it came about and the history of it. And actually, Elizabeth, you'll be pleased to know that the Labyrinth, as the Dromenon Project is focused around, there are several in Columbia, Missouri that people can go out in certain parks and they're available. So it is a thing that our world has come to know, and part of your story is going to tell us why and how that happened. Elizabeth's also a certified, what'd you call it,
Certified professional co-active life coach. Yeah.
Coactive.
Coactive. That means the coach and the client are actively involved in the process. It's not a give one way. It's a two-way street.
Excellent. All right. Well, Elizabeth, we met at Mystery School in Ashland, Oregon. Well, actually, probably up the road a bit. At that time, they were being done in Wilsonville, I think.
Exactly.
And, but you had started already with Gene Houston in Mystery School several years before that, and even 10 or so years maybe before that, you had wind of Gene Houston. Can you kind of lay the groundwork for how you, a Memphis entrepreneur, were you? Were you kind of an entrepreneur?
Kind of, yes.
And
But it's a story I like to tell. So yes, I'd be happy to.
Well, I'm just going to sit back and in my easy chair here and listen to this story from Elizabeth Austin, who's now in Ashland, Oregon, but had great roots, and here they are.
Thank you, Dick. Feel free to jump in anytime.
All right.
So, yes, I was living in Memphis when I connected with Gene, and at the time I was actually the president of the River School, which was it is still a maritime school for riverboat personnel. You don't really get that unless you live on the Mississippi River or one of the large rivers of the country that actually have traffic flowing, taking products from one place to another. And the Mississippi River, of course, flows right past Memphis and is a major artery for towboat traffic. The River School catered to riverboat captains and tankermen and engineers who needed to upgrade their licenses or to obtain a license. And my husband and I started that school in 1972. So around 1981, I was feeling change in the air, and as it evolved, I asked for help, divine help, if you will, and received it in interesting ways. One of the first things that made a difference in my life was, for some reason, I happened to hear about a lecture being given by an Englishman all the way from London, all the way to Memphis, Tennessee, to talk about sacred geometry, which was a new term for me in 1981. And some friends and I went, and I was really, really captured by one particular image of a labyrinth, actually the Chartres labyrinth, the one that's in the floor of the cathedral at Chartres in France. And it just captured me for some reason. And I never forgot it. So years later, when I actually saw another one in a big life size on another floor in the sports arena at Greenkill YMCA Center in New York, which is a big leap. It happened to be at Jean Houston's Mystery School. And it was part of the ritual event that we did each meeting, which is 9 times a year. So I had that experience, and then it just sort of infiltrated my life through the years in different ways. It is a remarkable pattern, and I've done some study of it. The first traces, as far as is known, of when the first people either traced it or carved it or drew it, goes back at least to, I think it's 2000 years BCE, okay? Mm-hmm. That's a long time ago. And it was just little marks. And that has grown and refined and become this really precise, really precision kind of pattern that's now in the cathedral at Chartres and many other cathedrals in France, because it was used, it was put in stone in the floor, and it was used for things we don't really know yet. We don't have any way of knowing because it hasn't been recorded, but it is assumed, and legend is that at least in some occasions, during the time that they were constructed, around, I think the one in Chartres was completed around 1220 in Common Era. That was during the time of the Crusades, and a lot of violence and difficulties in Europe. People were dedicated to go to Jerusalem anyway, but it was a difficult journey. And one thing that I guess the higher ups in the churches proclaimed, if you can't make it to make the pilgrimage to Jerusalem because of the danger, you can do the same thing, have the same benefits by using the labyrinth. And they might have had to walk it on their knees and do it several times, because the entire length is maybe a mile or two, but it's not a great long length, even if you do the whole thing. So that was something you could do instead. I thought that was rather interesting itself. And that particular labyrinth is the one that is the Dromenon. Jean Houston read a book around 1960 something. Gerald Hurd, it was a story rather. Gerald Hurd, the playwright and author, wrote a story, a short story called Dromenon, which is from the Greek. And it is a word that means path or road. So he wrote this story, which is a really interesting and mysterious story. And of course, that would capture Jean, as you know. And then she happened to go to that cathedral in Chartres with her mother and a not Jewish priest, a Jesuit priest. And he had quite an experience there, a really dramatic spiritual experience. And when that happened, Jean said, well, I knew there was something about this design that was important. So she took the pattern of the labyrinth. She called it Dromenon because that was the pattern that Gerald Hurd wrote about in his story. And when she was teaching all over the world, as you know, she taught in every civilization we can think of.
Mhm.
And she would include walking the labyrinth, which she called the Dromenon, as part of the process. So she planted labyrinths, Dromenons around the world. Then the later piece in 1991, it so happened that Lauren Artistry, who was an Episcopal priest and headed for the cathedral in San Francisco, stopped off to do a mystery school in New York. And that winter night, she was introduced to the labyrinth on the floor at the sports arena that I mentioned before. Mm-hmm. And I happened to be there at that time, and it was quite dramatic. I saw her response to that Dromenon on the floor, that labyrinth, and she immediately recognized that this may be her life work from this point forward.
Wow.
And sure enough, it has been. Mm-hmm. It was just very quickly that, that session was over. A few months later, I got a thing in the mail from her at the cathedral in San Francisco that she was having a Dromenon event, a labyrinth event. So she took it and ran with it. And she is the one who has really expanded the growth of the use of the labyrinth as a meditation tool, a personal growth tool, and has taken it out really big time public. So.
And you're referring to Grace Cathedral in San Francisco?
Grace Cathedral
yes,
in San Francisco. Right. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, sure. Exactly. So that's a piece. And then just to kind of connect with the mystery school connection, when the pandemic started, it changed life on the planet as we know it, of course, and lots of things have evolved as a result, not restricted to learning about Zoom, which we all have.
Yes.
Also, there's been a lot of creative creations, just creative thought that's happened. And one of them, it's interesting that another mystery school student, Chris Katzenmeyer, about the same time as I did, had the idea that this pattern, this Dromenon, this labyrinth, has power that hasn't been accessed yet. And she started the Big Connection, or the Legacy Labyrinth Project. She began working on it about the time I began working on my Dromenon project. Mm-hmm. And it has to do with groups of people walking the labyrinth together in a community with powerful intention and figuring out how does that work? What can it be? How can it be accessed for transformation? And so that's what we're working on now. She's doing it in one way. I'm doing it in another way. We're not really connected, but I think it's interesting that it sort of evolved around the same time.
Yeah. Well, let's take a pause with that.
Sure.
And I'd like to greet our listeners wherever you are today, folks. You might be in your car, at home, whatever, listening to the live show or the recording here on KOPN. .org. We stream, so you may be streaming with us. You may have it tuned in to your 89.5 FM, or we have podcasts of shows that go back through the 4 years that I've been doing this, and you may be catching us 4 years from now. Who knows? So, greetings. We're glad you're with us, and we appreciate your support for KOPN Community Radio. And again, I'll mention that we're almost 50 years old. 1973 is when New Wave Corporation got things set up and had our first on-air show. And recently, you might remember that Lee Ruth was on, who had a show on that very first week and has ever since then. So this is a continuing live organic, living kind of thing. So we appreciate your helping us stay alive the way you have been. My guest today is Elizabeth Austin from Ashland, Oregon. That's her home base for the last 24 years. Close. and she is the founder and uh, promoter, director of the Dromenon Project. And if you haven't heard the word Dromenon, you probably have heard the word Labyrinth, and sometimes in a spooky way, but other times maybe you've heard it in a very spiritual, creative, meditative way. And that's the one we're talking about today, is the meditative Dromenon. So, would you just bring us back? You had just mentioned another person just before we took a little break. Would you bring her back into your conversation again and just remind us who that was and how the parallels were taking place, and then we'll step on from there?
Sure. The other person's name is Chris Katzenmeyer, and she is actually deeply involved in a research project having to do with the use of the labyrinth as a tool to elevate the planetary energy, if you will.
Okay.
It depends on how you look at it, I guess. Anyway, the idea last year was the first year that she did this research project, and she invited people all over the planet to walk at a certain time on a certain day with an intention. And the intention was created by the research directors, and people were invited to hold that intention while they walked the labyrinth at this certain time on a certain day. And then they received a little form to fill out about their experience. And that then they submitted the form, which was taken into Baylor University and all the things that happen with a computer, and they printed out the results. And that was quite an interesting thing to do, first time ever. And so they've refined the whole process and are doing it again this year. The day that they chose last year was the World Labyrinth Day, which has been an observance every year for a number of years on the first Saturday of May. Now this year, that would be May 7th. And they chose a theme in which everybody in the world at 1 o'clock in their time zone would walk the labyrinth, 1 o'clock in the afternoon in your time zone, which means, of course, you're not all walking at the very same time, except it is a time zone time. And so that has been an event that happens every year. But last year it was different because of the addition of the research project. And this year it is also different because it's also a refined project, research project, in that people will walk with a certain intention according to what they're most interested in, whether it might be strengthening connections or environmental justice or social justice, that kind of thing. You choose the area that you're personally interested in, and then receive a communication with an email that will have the intention to just read it and hold it in your heart in a meditative way as you walk the labyrinth at 1 o'clock on May the 7th, wherever you are, and then receive a form to fill out. And so it'll be interesting to get that results back and discover what is the power of this ancient symbol, because it has captivated humanity for so long. Some people describe it as a divine imprint, meaning that it descended into the human soul in some fashion that we don't know about. And I kind of agree with that these things happen through some direction.
So, is there a link that people would go to sign up for that 1
There
hour?
is.
Would you share that if you have it?
I don't have it with me,
Oh,
but I'll
okay.
get it for you to use
Okay.
into this, because that's really an important thing, and I should have it with me, but I don't.
Okay. And if people wanted to Google and sort of search for it, they would look for.
You could look for World Labyrinth Day.
Okay.
Okay, that'll be one thing to look for. And in that, you will find the big connection, which is what this research project is doing, the big connection to number 2. And then another word is legacy labyrinth.
Ah. Very
So
good.
any one of those three terms
Hmm.
would probably get you to where you're looking. And I will
Perfect.
also send you that information.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for asking.
Oh, yeah. Uh, Also, as you were giving the early um, parts of the labyrinth's development, you mentioned it goes back maybe 2,000 years BC, as we say, BCE, whichever is
Mm-hmm.
appropriate these days. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
when Marcia, my wife, and I were in England, we went to Tintagel.
Mm-hmm.
And from Tintagel, we walked along the coast path to Rocky Valley.
Mm-hmm.
And when we went up Rocky Valley to St. Nectan's Glen and Falls,
Mm-hmm.
but on the way, there was a little old mill that had been shut down, of course. And over on a stone wall
Mm-hmm.
was a labyrinth. Now, not the 11
Mm-hmm.
circuit one, but one that had had the elements
Mm-hmm.
of what a labyrinth does.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out that there's a little plaque next to it that they believe that it goes back to 2000
Mm-hmm.
BCE.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got up to the pottery shop, and there was St. Nectan's pottery shop, and they had little all kinds of pottery that had that labyrinth embedded in the pottery works. And I bought a little cup, and so I have a little cup that has a 2,000-year-old image of a labyrinth that evidently
Right.
then evolved
Mm-hmm.
into this a magnificent 11 circuit you described um, labyrinth that might be more familiar to people's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, just wanted. Would that be the same
Yeah.
historical?
Yeah. Yeah. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. Good.
and you mentioned the different design. A lot of people confuse a labyrinth and a maze.
Mm-hmm.
A maze, like at Halloween, you have these Halloween mazes. People get in, they get lost, and it's all spooky and fun.
Mm-hmm.
The difference between a labyrinth and a maze is that in a maze, you hit dead ends all the time. You take a path and you hit a dead end. With a labyrinth, there are no dead ends. None.
Wonderful.
You start a path, and if you manage to stay on the path, you will arrive at the center. Okay. And the center, to me, this is what makes it so wonderful as a tool for meditation, for soul growth, for um, transformation, is in the center. There are 6 petals like a flower,
Mm-hmm.
petals of a flower. And the first petal, well, the petals you can designate them as you wish. And in my practice, when I'm leading a walk or anything like that, I like to have symbols in each petal, a symbol for each realm of creation, so that
Hmm.
the first petal represents the plants of the world. Actually, the first one I usually actually have a mineral in there because the minerals are the foundation. So I'll have a crystal or something. And the second one will be a plant for the vegetables of the world, all the plant materials from trees to uh, little tiny things.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third realm would be animals.
Mm-hmm.
And the fourth would be human beings. The fifth would be angels and saints, in other words, the unseen realms of creation. And the sixth petal would represent the unknown, which I refer to as the divine unknown, the plan that is unfolding, that we are a part of. So that there's the opportunity to pause in the center and just reflect on all creation and what it is now, what it has been, what it will be. And I have also, because it's very important to remember the children's fire, which is a kind of an American Indian tradition. the children's fire must be protected for the future. So in the Dromenon Project, we honor those 6 petals. And then in the center, we also remember the children's fire, that we must protect the children and their lives. So in the center, you receive all this, you're honoring all these elements of creation and receiving answers to your prayers sometimes, or images, thoughts, inspirations in the center. And then with all of that, you retrace your steps exactly the same way you came in is the way you go out. And there are lots of ways to handle a meditation in this way. And we can talk about those particular steps. I kind of raced ahead to the center because that is such a beautiful experience to remember. This is what it's all about. We're here for some reason, and it usually has to do with one of these 6 realms of creation, plus the children's fire, that ongoing tradition, spirit.
Similar to 7 generations into the future that sometimes we hear about and talk about. Yeah.
Sure.
It's also interesting to me that in the image, it's like there's 4 quadrants, or 4 directions, or north, south, east, and west, or the seasons, or there are so many universal symbols that combine into this particular pattern that you see.
Yes, it is. And it just, I really get enchanted by thinking about, through the years, through the hundreds of years that this pattern evolved into what it is. What were they thinking? How did this happen? And there it is. And then there are various, even with this particular circular pattern that's in the Cathedral at Chartres, there are several other cathedrals with a similar design, but not exactly. Some of them have square edges. Some of them, they have square edges, which is a strange thing to think about when you've seen the circular one. And they're just different applications of the same principle. How did that happen? It's a mystery. It's really an exciting mystery to think about.
Well, as you're talking about universal images and patterns, I'm just curious, did you ever have the opportunity to talk to Angeles Arian about the Labyrinth or the Dromenon?
No, but I've talked to people who did talk to her.
Oh, okay. Because she was so into the universal images, the 5 in particular.
Yeah,
and
right.
What did you hear? Did you recall any?
She's just another wonderful spirit in the whole world
Yeah.
of evolution and becoming greater than we think we can be, becoming all we can be. Yeah.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to be in her presence there at either probably social artistry
Good for you.
in Ashland a couple of times, and
Good for you.
yeah, got a couple of her books, and
Yeah,
good. So you're doing something every quarter? There's something happening.
There is something happening.
There's something happening here. And
yes. The first happening was October the 9th, 2020, which was the first meeting of the Dromenon Project as an official launch of the project. And it is a lovely group of people who come together. And right now our schedule is quarterly. And we had our first meeting of the spring quarter of 2022 just this past Friday. And we have created a way to be together that has enhanced our lives and improved the community itself. Because of the pandemic, we're not limited in geography anymore,
right,
which is pretty amazing. I'm talking to you, you're in Missouri, I'm in Oregon. And on Friday, we had people in New York, California, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Alabama, had people all over the country tuned in at the same time. And we were able to be together in a very coherent way. The the idea of the whole thing is to increase personal coherence or balance and expand that beyond the individual into everyone we're connected with
Mm-hmm.
and onto the world. Now, today at noon my time, I tuned into the Global Coherence Pulse, which you may be familiar with.
I'm
It,
not.
uh, it's a project of several organizations, including Heart Math, which you may have heard
Yes.
of.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be something everybody should know about, because with our heart, just the heart that pounds in our body their entire life, by breathing into the heart and out of the heart, in and out, with consciousness and awareness and gratitude, we can change how we feel. We can change how people around us feel. We can make a difference. Now, that's powerful and that's really important. And it might sound strange until you do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so simple, and that we have this in ourselves, that if we use it, we can make a difference. So that's
Mm-hmm.
one. At the beginning of our meeting, we always have an energy process, which
Mm-hmm.
kind of clears the body of difficult energies and
Mm-hmm.
gets us ready. And
Mm-hmm.
then we have the heart coherence that we also do. So that sets it up so that we really we are together in a different way than we would be otherwise. That
Mm-hmm.
I can say without doubt. It's
Right.
really quite excellent. So we have we have a community of it's a smallish community, 40 to 50 usually, and we have observed the balance that has happened, the coherent community that has formed through this meeting periodically.
And this is on Zoom that you're together. Is that correct?
On Zoom, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's not
Just
a
like you and
physical
me.
gathering, right? Yeah.
No, it's on Zoom because
Mm-hmm.
we had that's the only way you could do it in 2020,
Mm-hmm. Right.
and it works, and so we're continuing to do it. And the because it is Zoom, of course, you can't go out and walk a labyrinth, because most labyrinths are on the ground outside and you walk it.
Sure.
We do it with our fingers. So, and it's amazing. I was a bit curious when I started this. Well, would that work? Would
Mm-hmm.
that really work? And it really does. It really,
Mm. Okay. Okay.
it is as effective to walk with your fingers on a handheld labyrinth as it is to
Mm-hmm.
walk with your feet on one on the ground. To
Well,
calm yourself, to ease the mood. I've interrupted you.
let's come back to that
All
in
right.
just another minute of greeting folks that are listening in today on KOPN, your community radio station out of Columbia, Missouri, 89.5 FM if you're actually listening to your tuner, or if you're streaming on the web, it's kopn.org. And we're about to celebrate our 50th anniversary. And guess where we're going to be celebrating? It's going to be in our new building that we're in the process of moving into right now. Uh, by the way, also in the process of paying off. So if you have something that you might want to share in that direction, don't hesitate to go to the website kopn.org and look for donate. The capital campaign has done great work to get us way over half, 2/3, almost 3/4 of our goal, and we want to get to that home stretch before the new year. So do what you can, and help us celebrate 50 years of community radio, music of the world, diverse talk, all you can listen to things that are coming in from Democracy Now! Or Fresh Air or different places that are syndicated around the country. But the majority of our programming is homegrown right here with talk shows like this or music shows. I was listening to the Hispanic show for a couple hours this morning. Just music that you wouldn't hear some other places. Thanks for joining us today. This is Glocal News in Social Artistry, which combines the local and global. And Elizabeth Austin, our guest, is such a master of this, because here's a global, in a sense, phenomenon of the labyrinth or Dromenon, and yet it's now local in so many places, right here in Columbia, Missouri as well. So, welcome back, Elizabeth Austin. You were just saying how in this Dromenon project, and by the way, would people just go to dromenonproject.org to access this?
Dromenonproject.com is the
.com?
website.
Oh, okay. And if they do, they're going to be able to sign up for participation in a Zoom group. Is that kind of what?
Yes. On the website, there's information about the background of what is a Dromenon and how it came to be, as well as the schedule for the year. And the spring quarter has begun. There'll be 3 more meetings this quarter, and then there will be a summer quarter. So all those dates are included on the website, and there's a way to sign up for more information for those who are interested.
And this is a once a month on Zoom?
We meet
Roughly?
every 2 weeks. We meet every 2
Oh,
weeks.
every 2 weeks. Okay. Great, great.
And it's a 2-hour meeting, and we have a variety of things that happen, and outstanding teachers include Peggy Rubin, who has written books about and studied joy, the Upanishads' joy, and so that is actually our framework for the project, is honoring creation and joy. And then Jean Houston is also a presenter each session. So Peggy presents her teaching, and then Jean also presents a teaching. And then we have the handheld Dromenon walk using finger labyrinths, and then discussion of the experience. It's an what we call it. The Dromenon Project is inner pilgrimages for modern times. So that's gives you a hint as to what we're about. Each session is actually focused on the experience of the Dromenon walk itself, the inner pilgrimage, and time to reflect upon it and to glean, harvest the riches of an inner pilgrimage.
And you had mentioned earlier that the word Dromenon is like a Greek, or comes from the Greek, and means path.
Path or road.
Or road. And I think it might be worth folks just hearing that there was that story written by whom?
Gerald Heard, Heard.
Okay.
And it's a short story that he wrote in the 60s, the late 50s or 60s, early 60s, called Dromenon. And it's a mysterious, strange story. It's kind of hard to find, but around there are little books you can get that include that story. And it's really interesting.
Do you know if anybody's been able to make a PDF of that story?
Oh, I have. I happen to have a PDF.
Is it legal that you have a link to that on the Dromenon Project page?
I don't have a link on the page. I need to investigate that, because I would not want to violate any copyright privileges. But that could be, thank you for that. I'll see about getting that. I think, as far as I know, the story and the book it's in are out of print. And I don't know but if that's possible, that's a great idea. Thank you, Dick.
Yeah, I was going to go look it up myself, but if it's already, kind of in the can, so to speak, yeah, it'd be great.
Yeah, great.
Okay.
I'll write that down. I'll see about doing that very thing.
So, it sounds just a little bit, if we can give homage to our teachers, that Jean Houston had taught around the world, had done the cities of the U.S. With her projects, and the possible human and the possible city, and I don't know, she's big on possibilities.
Unlimited.
Yes.
Much more.
And so through Mystery School, and you met her through the East Coast. Well, you met her in Memphis.
Right. She came to Memphis.
And which was interesting. I think you said you hosted some kind of a little dinner party or
Oh, that
breakfast or?
was fun. It was, as I had mentioned, when I was in Memphis, I was going through major life changes that everything shifted and
No, nobody else goes through those at age
nobody else
40,
does.
do they?
I know. All the big things happen at times of crisis. At any rate, I had just called out for help because I needed some things, and
Hmm. Hmm.
one thing I needed was to be interested in something again.
Hmm.
And so the next day or two, here comes this brochure across my desk at work at the River School about a workshop that was going to happen in the fall by Jean Houston. I had never heard of her, but I read this brochure and it was really fascinating. And I thought, maybe that's who I need as a role model because I was working as a woman in a male field. The
Hmm.
maritime industry was 99% men, and I was unsure of myself.
Hmm.
Um, my husband and I had divorced, and I was on my own with this school
Hmm.
in Memphis, Tennessee.
Hmm.
So I thought, well, maybe I could benefit by knowing somebody who travels the world and does these things. So how do I get to meet her? That was my question. You know, there are going to be a lot of people at this workshop. How am I going to meet her and make a connection with her? And at the time, I happened to have a new membership in the Petroleum Club. I don't know if I would be proud of that today, but
Yeah.
it was this big building on the Mississippi River with a penthouse restaurant. And so I called a woman who was producing this workshop and said, say, could we have some kind of luncheon or something for Jean? I had been wanting to do that, but I've been so busy with this other stuff that I haven't been able to plan it. Yes, she said. And so what I thought I was going to do was be invite Jean and maybe one or two or three others to lunch. Wound up being like a 40-person banquet
Yeah.
on the top floor of the Petroleum Club overlooking the Mississippi River.
Uh,
Well, she may remember me if I do that. And it was really lovely. It was a beautiful event, and she just blew me away. And I thought, yeah, and she became, when I would have times that I would wonder, what do I do now? I would sometimes just, well, what did Jean Houston do? And it would just, it might not get an idea necessarily, but it would at least give me a little more space in my lungs to breathe in and figure out what to do next. So that was
and
a lovely thing.
as you wrote the story that I read, Jean was sitting on one side of you and
Oh,
Peggy
yeah.
Rubin was on the other
That's
side.
right.
You
At the
were.
lunch, I was so clever to see Jean on my right. I didn't know who Peggy was until I didn't know there was a Peggy,
Uh-huh.
but there was Jean on my right. Of course, she chose to speak with an anthropologist on her other side,
Hmm.
but Peggy was on my left side,
Hmm.
and we talked, and it created a, well, they both have become very dear friends.
Oh, whoa.
That was in 19, what, 80, 89, I guess, was when that happened.
Yeah.
And through the years, we have become very dear friends. And I'm so grateful to both of them for themselves and the life they live and the example they bring to the world. And they're so generous
Hmm.
to share their giftedness with people. So it's been wonderful.
Well, you followed Jean to mystery school, or went to her mystery school up in
New York.
Catskill, or what you
Yeah.
what's that called?
Where was that? Where was that? It was somewhere in New York. It was um, the Greenkill
Yeah.
YMCA in Fort Jervis, I believe.
Yeah, yeah, I think you mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then all of a sudden, Jean moves to the West Coast, to
Right.
Ashland, Oregon,
Mhm, mhm.
and starts another mystery school, but does both of them
Right.
through the
That was
years.
pretty amazing, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
She was
And,
brave.
and you decided to move to Ashland, Oregon.
Well, I moved to Ashland before she did.
Oh, you did? Well, there. I didn't
That's
know
great.
that. Okay.
Yes, yes.
I thought
Yeah.
1998 was a little early for her, but I
She
didn't
moved
realize.
here in 2001, I believe. It's
Hmm.
either the summer of 2000 or 2001. And she
Hmm.
started the West Coast Mystery School
Hmm.
in 2001, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, I met her in the summer of 2001 at a national wellness conference,
Mhm.
and then started mystery school in the fall of that year, and
Wasn't
throughout.
that a good plan of yours to start Mystery School? It was good.
Well,
And I will remember you because you sang that Hallelujah.
oh, right, right.
That was such a wonderful treat.
Well, and it's such a magical experience of flying in an airplane, and my daughter had just introduced me to the song really in a new
Mhm.
way, and
Yeah.
this kind of like your six petals of the center there. It sort of took a journey of five steps because there's five verses, and it started with the beginning of creation and the angels, and so yeah. Thank you so much. I wanted to also mention that uh, around 1981,
Mhm.
I'm in Missouri. I'm kind of doing a business with a friend of mine called Value Life Associates, and we were part of the ASTD, American Society for Training and Development.
Mhm.
And I'm on a committee to try to plan a conference, and we needed a keynote speaker, and some guy brought cassette tapes of a keynote speaker that he thought might be good, and gave each of us a copy of a cassette tape. Well, I was also heavily invested as a volunteer minister in a church school group, and I didn't have time to even listen to the tape. Uh, but you know whose name was on the tape? Gene Houston. I kept the tape, and 20 years later, I listened to it for the first time, and
Isn't that amazing?
that was the spring of 2001.
And then you signed up.
And then I went to that wellness conference, and as they say, the rest is history.
Isn't it amazing how things come together?
It is, and you know, I didn't know in '81 that I was in a sense searching, but when I look back at that time, it was a bit of a tumultuous
Hmm.
time in my life, and
Hmm.
yeah. Well, how interesting that we've woven our lives or
It
been
is
woven
true.
this way.
It is, and it's exciting and hopeful and energizing,
Hmm.
inspiring. Yeah.
Hmm.
I've just picked, I got this little book. A friend gave me this little book for my birthday the other day.
Hmm. Oh
And
yes, I forgot to wish you happy
thank you.
birthday.
I thought I'd just bring that up. I never
Uh-huh.
figured I would make it this far, but I did for some reason. But this,
Shall we tell them it's the big
oh, it's the 80,
80?
80,
Yes, 80.
80.
Yeah.
Are you there yet, Dick?
No, I'm going to be
Ahead of
78 this fall.
Okay, cool.
Right behind you.
Congratulations. I Peggy Dean gave me this little book and I've been reading it and I have it open right now to what I think is really important. Well, one of the things is it's a book of quotes and aphorisms of
Hmm.
inspiring. This is from Pierre Teilhard de Chardin.
Oh, we know about
We
him
know
now.
him. Our duty as men and women is to proceed as if limits to our ability did not exist. We are collaborators in creation.
Hmm.
And right now that we are collaborators in creation really strikes me poignantly because every day I am reminded that when we create something, we are replicating the original act of creation, however we see that, whether we're talking about creation of the world, whether it was God breathed out or said, let there be, or however creation happened. Every time we create something, we're replicating that action. I think our hearts are tuned in to want to do that. So that creation is important. That's why those petals are populated with the realms of creation for my projects.
Hmm.
It's why I think it's what inspires us to continue, even
Hmm.
when the going is hard. And it is really hard right now. It
Hmm.
may be the most difficult times, but we can create
Hmm.
and we can continue.
Hmm. You know, I don't know if it was a mystery school or social artistry or some other way, but the phrase co-creators of the future
Mhm.
came into my being
Mhm.
probably 20 years ago, not
Mhm.
more.
Mhm.
And that phrase has been given out along with another phrase, if it is to be, it is up to us.
Mhm.
And this whole idea that even though we say we're creating something, we really don't create anything by ourselves.
Absolutely.
So in a sense, everything we do is in a co-creative way, which I think adds to the humility of life and the joy of life that
Mhm.
um, we can't help but be co-collaborators because, you know, where did our thoughts come from? Where did our language? Where did our experiences? It all came because of relationships.
Indeed. Indeed.
And I think your Dromenon, your Labyrinth is celebrating those relationships. Those six petals is we relate to minerals. My wife is just into geology gangbusters now. Just we got rocks all over the house.
Yes.
We just went to Death Valley just to look at rocks and things. So there's the minerals and the animals, of course, and all the things that you mentioned are co-collaborating with us.
One of the points about that that is particularly important to me is that this ancient symbol that goes way back to 2000 BCE or before, we don't really know when it began, and has come forward through to now in this beautifully, of course, 1200 in the common era is not exactly now, it's way back there,
Mm-hmm.
but it evolved in that primitive design into that very beautiful, precise design in the medieval times and onto the present time, and we're carrying it on into the future.
Mm-hmm.
So we're connecting
Mm-hmm.
way back onto
Mm-hmm.
now, onto the future, which to me suddenly has become important
Mm-hmm.
to really connect with our roots, our history, in a way that's meaningful and improve it as much as we can, if we can, at least protect it and keep it
Mm-hmm.
in integrity and hand it off to the next
Mm-hmm.
go around. So it feels right to be doing this. It feels good.
It does. It does indeed. I
Yeah.
thank you. And
I thank you.
I think our listening audience has something possibly new to mull over and maybe do a little research on the web of the DromenonProject.com. Find out about this work that's going on out of Ashland, Oregon, but it's actually a universal work that's going on.
Indeed, it is. Thank you.
So, Elizabeth Austin, I think our time is about up.
It's been
So
wonderful. Thank you.
it's just been great. There's just three little phrases that what you just said a minute ago go through my mind. In gratitude for the past, in service to the present, and in responsibility for the future. That seems to be what you're doing with bringing the past, bringing it into the present, so that the future will have all this richness to benefit from.
You said that very well, Dick. Thank you.
Thank you once again, Elizabeth Elizabeth Austin, out of Ashland, Oregon. And friends, remember, wherever you are, that is your world. Please leave your world cleaner, more peaceful, and more loving than you found it, because if it is to be, it is up to us. Take care and talk to you soon.